Hello, my third choice of Nietzsche quotation is taken from section 111 of his book, Human, All Too Human. When one rows, it is not the rowing that moves the ship. Rather, rowing is simply a magical ceremony by which one compels a demon to move it. Here, Nietzsche is displaying a wicked sense of humour. By obliquely pointing at science, he is hinting that it is awash. Science is awash with demons. To him, concepts like force and gravity, centre of gravity, the principle of moments, the inverse square law, etc., are all demons. But because the magical ceremony of mathematics delivers consistent results, we are convinced that they actually exist in the fabric of reality. Just consider gravity, the phenomenon of things falling in an apparently consistent and predictable manner. This is a classic example of a Nietzsche's demon. Gravity doesn't cause objects to fall. Objects fall all on their own. Gravitational theories are just the ways we describe the falling. Newton, of course, uses the concept of gravity as an explanation of what is happening. But as Nietzsche says in section 112 of The Gay Science, we call it explanation, but it is description, which distinguishes us from earlier stages of knowledge and science. We describe better. We explain just as little as any who came before us. According to Nietzsche, what we have is a pale snapshot of what is necessarily so. The phrase necessarily so is a shorthand way of stressing that explanations, the answer to the world, the universe and everything, does not come with an equation. Now, Douglas Adams, a proselytizing technophile, gave the answer to this ultimate question in his Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy as an equation. In the book, and at the behest of a group of hyper-intelligent, pan-dimensional beings, the giant computer Deep Thought took 7.5 million years to come up with the equation 7 times 8 equals 42. Now, I originally thought that Adams was making a philosophical joke. I believed he was implying that the very notion of an equation being the answer to such an all-encompassing question was quite ridiculous. But no, once in a private conversation, he told me that he believed unconditionally in the explanations delivered by mathematical equations. He had used this solemn, ironical, and arithmetically incorrect statement simply because it sounded funny. Now back to Newton. Following the publication of Principia Mathematica in 1687, right up until the early 20th century, when Einstein started formulating gravity in terms of the curvature of space and time, Newton's descriptions of the law of universal gravitation and the 3 laws of motion had led to, and still lead to, many useful scientific advances. And yet they are not strictly true. This must beg the question, are there degrees of malleability in scientific truth, in the way we describe, more or less accurately, the reality in which we live? Now, despite Einstein having identified the problems with Newtonian mechanics, secondary schools still teach the inverse square law, without questioning it. Students are still asked to believe in action at a distance, that the two bodies magically attract one another with a force proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. How does that force come into existence when it requires a measurement of both the masses themselves and the distance between the two bodies? Yet each body, whatever that body is, has no observation or cognition of the other's existence or means of measurement. The Newtonian interpretation of gravity was accepted because it works for most practical applications. As a mathematical schema, it has great utility, enabling us to fire projectiles over large distances with great accuracy, to calculate the orbits of the planets, except for a slight problem with Mercury, and to send rockets to the moon. Newtonian mechanics works in everyday mundane experience, as does the notion of centre of gravity and balance in the principle of moments, and because it works, few until Einstein questioned it. Clearly you can see why Nietzsche called this demonic action, and yet although these ideas are intrinsically nonsensical, they do however have a utility, a great utility. It was that utility that for centuries routed the nihilistic objections, despite the ideas being merely approximations. What Nietzsche is saying is that such concepts as gravity and force cannot be observed or measured in themselves. What is being perceived and measured are the observable effects of the unobservable demons that we call gravity and force. So, how does gravity work? How else than by the necessity of a Nietzschean demon that somehow makes what happens in the world of phenomena correlate closely with our mathematical models. Not surprisingly, we can then make the leap of faith from correlation to a scientific causation and insist that the world acts according to our mathematical models. Now, granted, science is a highly sophisticated search for truth, but ineffable demons will always ensure that science is flawed. Science is limited, focused on a peculiar form of tunnel vision, which can only ever approximate part of the picture, but at a price, the price of demons unleashing numerous paradoxes. Thank you.